My name is Carolyn Thomas Jones, and I am associate professor of clinical nursing at the College of Nursing and director of the Master of Clinical Research program there. And I'm also co-director of workforce development for the OSU CCTS. And so I've been at OSU since 2014 and have been in clinical research for, I will say, 30 years. I've quit counting because then it really ages me. So I'm going to give a talk. I've been asked several times, tell your story, tell us all these things you've done and what are your, share your experience, strength, and hope as a clinical research professional. Excuse me for morning groveled voice. It's early in Alabama. So charting your clinical research professional path today. And so this is what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to tell my story and lessons from my path. We'll talk about current clinical research issues today. And I will share some information from Collaborative Conversations, which is an unmeeting that is being held nationally across on clinical research professional issues in academic medical centers. Talk a little bit about the OSU CRP network, tips for growing professionally, how to format your CV, professional memberships and learning, and maybe drop a hint about maybe an idea for a professional a writing group of some sort. So all these sorts of things may brainstorm up, and so be jotting notes down, and we'll talk about any of it. So I thought I'd use my cell phone thing because we're all remoting, right? We're remoting in Zoom, we're remoting on our phones. So this is me, Carolyn Thomas Jones, and I'm going to share my story. So believe it or not, I started in clinical research as a second career. I started nursing as a second career. My initial career was art education. So I was an elementary and high school art teacher with a degree in studio arts as well as education in art. And so there was my laboratory, there was my office, the art room. And this was back in the day. Just to date it a little bit, I have the dates up there, but Ronald Reagan was president. Now, what you may or may not know about the politics then was very conservative, and education should be the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. And so you know what that did to the arts programs. You can well imagine. And I moved around this time and was in a new city and needed to find an art job. And I had a job interview set up for one of the largest high schools in Birmingham, Alabama. And on my way to the interview, I was behind the garbage truck. And so I always say, the garbage truck is why I am here today. That garbage truck on a very narrow 2-lane road that stretched for several miles would not progress as rapidly as I thought it should. And so I was 10 minutes late for my interview. And the superintendent of schools said to me, "I do not hire tardy teachers." Well, I was devastated. And several of my friends who also had education degrees were taking nursing courses. And so they said, "This is what you should do." And it was sort of a Scarlett O'Hara moment. I will never be unemployed again. So nursing school it was, and that's how I got there, the garbage truck. So lesson learned, flexibility. You got to be flexible and open to new ideas. There are brave new roads. Politics do matter. Lemonade, you've heard that, making lemonade out of lemons. Yum. I got thrown back from being an independent, to someone who had to study all the time with a small child. Creativity does travel with you. And if you don't think that science and clinical research field lacks creativity, well, you're wrong. And you're using that creative side of your brain constantly. I'm a lifelong learner. I found that out. I found out that I loved and excelled in science. Who knew? And I'm really good at this. But I did have that humility of being a novice again as I'm thrown into the CCU, um, dealing with lots of tubes and very sick patients and ventilators and all of that. So I went from art teacher to CCU nurse, and I really became good at it and enjoyed it quite a bit. So cardiology rocks. CCU is the coronary care unit. And so I just loved that. My father was a cardiologist. And so I just loved the heart. ICU is a very complex environment. I began to really understand team science even at that location because so much was changing in cardiology at that. If you think about it, they did not have, it was only open heart surgery. You know, they had some balloon pumps, but if you're not cardiac, you may not understand this, but I mean, stenting, just doing a balloon angioplasty was brand new, brand new. So it was just so exciting. Excellence is the only option. That is a lesson learned. You do something wrong, you kill the patient, right? Critical thinking is required at all times. So, you know, you've got these intense little things, but then the big picture, and it's constant back and forth and new information. And I availed myself to learn everything I could from PIs because at an academic medical center, pretty much all of them are PIs, and my mentors. And I also went to the literature. I love that about nursing school. I cannot believe we can now just go to the literature with a click of a mouse. I had to trudge, you know, after hours to the library and pull things. But now, you know, as an OSU employee, all you have to do is click into the library, log in, and you can get full text articles and continuously learn. Well, one of the PIs in cardiology approached me one day and said, I just got this NIH grant. Would you be interested? And I'm like, tell me more. And so I was hired to work on a cardiology arrhythmia study called the Caste Study. And really the hypothesis was if, you know, do antiarrhythmic drugs, which were also new, hot off the press, do they prevent sudden death in post-MI patients? And so they had 3 drugs, and it was still, to this day, one of the most complex studies I've ever worked in because we had a screening thing that was randomized, and then we have the big randomization for the placebo-controlled trial. So it was very complex, and I was recruiting from 3 hospitals that were affiliated with UAB Hospital. So planning and organizational skills are absolutely central in this job, right? Efficiency, human subject protections. You know, I didn't have any training when I started my job. I was told by the PI that I need you to recruit a lot of patients to this trial. Your job is to recruit. I expect to see numbers, blah, blah, blah. And I will admit, some of my first informed consents were me sitting on the edge of the bed in the VA, cute young blonde thing, saying, I want to tell you about this trial. Very few said no to me, but there's a lot I've learned over the years about human subjects protection. Team science, again, more and more about that, more learning, role development. And then also, since it was an NIH trial, we were dealing with some calls or some newsletters and meetings where we got to meet our cohorts from other academic medical centers, and that was very exciting. Learned a lot about recruitment, data management, drug accountability, randomization, and what double blind meant. We were so good at my site. I was such a good recruiter that at one of the annual meetings in Albuquerque, they gave a free hot air balloon ride to the top 3 enrolling sites. And so I got to go up in a hot air balloon. And it was right before the Albuquerque Balloon Festival. And that was thrilling. And so I even had lesson learned from there. If you move with the wind, it's not windy. So you're up there in the balloon and the balloon's moving, you're moving with the wind. So you don't really feel the wind. Flying over a desert smells like Thanksgiving dinner. And somehow you have to land. That was something we had the aha moment while we're up there going, how are we getting down? Of course, they had people helping with that, but it still occurred to me that we were going down. They do serve champagne when you land a balloon. So that was, always know that. And if you ever take a hot air balloon ride, make sure that they pack that champagne. But you also have responsibilities as a rider on the balloon. They didn't tell me about either. You have to pack it up and it goes into a little container. And I don't know how we did it, but we did. But that was after they plowed us with a glass of champagne. And so I really, balloon ride aside, I really began to do some presentations at these national meetings about recruitment, but also getting to know the coordinators at other academic medical centers. As I continued on in my role, I realized that the role of a clinical research coordinator was really, a valuable commodity to the clinical research enterprise. And so I kind of thought, I'm going to start a business and do this, and I'm going to take clinical trials to private practice physicians. And so I left the university. I think I was still high off the balloon ride. I don't know, but, and I started my own business of clinical research coordinators. And I cold called pharmaceutical companies. And, the thing about starting a business, you have to learn how to develop a business plan. So you can't go cold calling at Pfizer and get a clinical trial, or Eli Lilly and get a clinical trial, unless you had some semblance of something to offer them in terms of what can you do, how can you do it, and why should we give you our business. And so I did learn how to do that, and we were pretty successful. I had nurses working for me, and we had trials of a wide range of subject matter. And I became involved in a professional organization at that time, which was a very new organization called ACRP. So, these roles are valuable: clinical research coordinator and clinical research nursing. Leadership is an essential skill, and you need to learn it, whether it's just for yourself personally, for yourself as a member of a team, or if you're going to jump off and lead some initiative. I learned how to start a business. And the great valuable thing about that is a real strong understanding that this work, every study you do, is like operating a project. It's like operating a small business. And so we need to learn how to make a business case for what we're doing. And I had to learn how to pay salaries. And there was a few months I broke some of the cardinal rules of not paying myself so I could make sure I could pay my staff when we were first getting up and going. Learned a lot about the pharmaceutical industry, regulatory affairs. I was asked to be on an IRB at one of the local hospitals at the time. So my learning curve was really going up and up. And I also began doing a little consulting in clinical research, particularly with training. I ultimately returned to UAB because the stress of making salary was too much, and I sold the business. Didn't make anything on that, by the way, but and I went back to interventional cardiology and did some work with stenting at the time, but then went to the Division of Infectious Diseases. And because Michael Sag in HIV research and Peter Pappas and Bill Dismukes recruited me over and said, you know how to do clinical research, and besides which those cardiologists, it's just, plumbers and electricians. So I really enjoy working with, being on the cutting edge all the time, but with HIV was brand new. A lot of us became death toxic. Our patients died. It's a little bit like, I was talking to somebody yesterday that it was a little bit like what's happening now with the pandemic, this acute situation that nobody knew what to do about. And then ultimately I became the administrative director of their coordinating center and worked with NIH and key opinion leaders nationally to develop protocols and case report forms and work with statisticians and for multi-center trials. And so that was a great experience. And I think everything I had done in the past had informed me. And I was hungry for education. UAB paid for tuition for employees, and they didn't have a clinical research program, but I did get an MSPH in epidemiology and did some of my own episurveillance of cryptococcal disease in the state of Alabama alongside another study that CDC was running in San Francisco and Atlanta. And again, I was doing coordinator training by mistake. In other words, my PI would say, you've been at this, you're really good at this. So-and-so just hired a new coordinator, can they follow you? And that happened a few times. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I need to just start organizing something. And I wrote a little grant within the university to put on symposia 3 times a year. And did coordinator training, bringing in outside speakers from FDA, OHRP, and Tuskegee Institute. So it was a great event, but that was all on the side. That was like my lunch money. There was no money. I mean, it's like what I did during my lunch break. So it wasn't part of my job description. And I think that's what happens with coordinator training is people take that on as, being responsible to train other people, but there's no job description. There's no set aside job just for education and training. And so that was just an interesting thing. So, studying the role was very important. There was nothing in the literature about clinical research coordination. And so I was determined to find whatever I could. And then I thought, well, if there aren't any, maybe I should write some. So cardiology to infectious disease, you see more team science. I learned about data safety monitoring boards, developing case report forms, but also developing SOPs. And one of the courses that I did as a consultant for a company was how to develop SOPs, because you'd be surprised how many people don't have them, or they have them, but nobody's read them and nobody follows them and there's no accountability for them. And then just continuing to develop the role. And then eventually becoming a PI, just getting into that realm of, I want to study more about this role. What can I do? How can I go about doing this? Well, we opened our coordinator training to the community. And so a large cardiology practice came to our sessions because they were struggling with some clinical research they were doing on their own. And so Cardiovascular Associates stole me away from UAB. He said, we want you to come and start our clinical research program. And I said to them, well, you'll have to pay me like a man, which is an unheard of thing for a Southern woman to say to a bunch of guys. But guess what? If you ask, you will receive. And so they did. So I had to say goodbye to infectious diseases, which I kind of hated. So another brave leap. I was out of my comfort zone once again. I was claiming that I was worth more money. The business of private practice, that was a whole nother realm. I was a director. And so I was on directors meetings and learning about RVUs and all those sorts of things that really are the backdrop of how medicine operates, whether you're an academic or not. And then I began to publish on clinical research coordinator roles and getting my staff involved in publication and being on that IRB. I was also pulled back in as a consultant to UAB to develop some teaching courses in clinical research for coordinators who are working on NIH studies in low resource countries, India, Africa, South America, Pacific Islands. And so I began doing that kind of educational development and looking at what are the core competencies, because when you develop a curriculum, you have to be thinking of, well, what is it we want people to know? And if we know what we want them to know, then we can build a curriculum around that. What do they need to know? What are the essential things they need to know? And so I began some research on doing needs assessment for what's really needed for the role. And so I did some of that work with the School of Nursing, and then ultimately got a postmaster certificate in teaching nursing, because all this work that I was doing for them on the side was remote. I ultimately went to UAB and began developing their own program there. But I learned about curriculum development, and it tied in a lot of what I already knew about education from my K through 12 art education, because education is education. But began doing more involvement with the professional associations and just recognizing the global nature of clinical research. And then also learning a lot about instructional design and developing an academic program. And so I became a faculty member at the School of Nursing and a co-PI on some Fogarty grants for training and education. And I joined several. By then, I had upped my ante and had joined several professional associations. None of this was paid for by my institution. This was my own professional growth, my own choice to really learn what is happening. I got to go to the DIA meeting for free because I volunteered to review abstracts. And so there's a lot of things you can do to help subsidize those activities. I gave talks at ACRP, and so that waived my meeting fees for that. And then became involved with a group of other academic programs and clinical research directors, and we came together and did more research and synthesis of the core competencies and published that. And so you should be well familiar with the JTF core competencies that most academic programs are patterned against, the accreditation standards are patterned against, the certifications are patterned against now. And I obtained my doctorate because I knew if I wanted to ever get any funding for anything that I'm doing, I needed to have a doctorate to do that. Then my ID guys called me back. And they said that their NIH grant had kind of fizzled. And so from 1978 to 2005, they were under this umbrella of NIAID funding from the NIH to form this consortium of key opinion leaders in fungal disease for fungal drug research and diagnostic research. And they needed to form a nonprofit organization. And so I helped them with that. And now I'm a consultant, executive director with that group. So I'm still a clinical research nurse. I'm still a teacher. I'm becoming a scientist. I am a scientist. I'll just go ahead and claim it. And so I've become full circle a lot of times, it's amazing. And I loved the global outreach. That graduate curriculum is a lot more than deciding I'm going to give a little webinar. It's a huge thing, very complex, set with policies and procedures, just like anything. The JTF core competencies were a hugely impactful thing, and conducted more research on CRPs. I did the diamond study, et cetera. And just how do you form a nonprofit? That was a whole new thing. Well, through my professional association, Margie Nidecker was the treasurer of this consortium of academic programs and clinical research. And so, and I was president of the group. And she said, OSU is starting a program. Would you consider, it's all 100% online. And so they recruited me, and here I am. And I've been here since 2014, developed most of the core courses in the program, and continued to teach. And now I am director of the program. And so it's an exciting road, and to become involved with the CCTS. I was multi-PI on the diamond study, where we found a way to share education across all the academic medical centers by asking them to put it into the Diamond portal. So you go to diamondportal.org and find things. And then became involved with the OSU CCTS and am co-director of workforce development there. One of our initiatives was to develop an unmeeting, and the unmeeting was going to take place in Seattle back in April. And as we were planning this unmeeting, it was going to take place the day before the ACRP meeting. So if you worked in an academics medical center and you were attending ACRP, we were going to invite you to a free seminar, a half day, to really, pull out, tease out, study, discuss the issues of clinical research professionals who work in academic medical centers. And ACRP was interested in this because they realized that most of their membership do not come from academic medical centers, that a lot of the people in academic medical centers are members of SOCRA because of their link to comprehensive cancer centers and NCI back in the day when they were originally formed. So I'm going to tell you more about the collaborative conversations. Obviously, we didn't meet in Seattle in April because of COVID. So we ended up, as I say, here we are, where's my mask? And so now we're doing a series of webinars. I also became a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing. So lessons learned. Impact is important, and we're all making impact, but it's important to be really recognizing what are the issues that we have, what can we do to make it better? Are we going to be a spectator, or are we going to, get in there and climb up and climb together and, try to solve some of the problems? Workforce development is a key problem. We need scientists, we need clinical research support staff, and we need a diverse workforce because it obviously is not. And that's a huge gap that we have to tackle. Learning how to be a mentor and mentoring new leaders is important, and we need to do more work in that area. And we need to begin studying and developing personalized pathways for the clinical research professional work group, because this is what other professions do. If you worked in industry, in pharmaceutical industry, everybody has a personalized pathway and a mentor to help them navigate. Physicians do this, scientists do this, but we aren't doing it for ourselves. So yeah, we're dealing with this global pandemic. So the current issues today, I'll quit talking about myself, is increasing complexity of clinical trial protocols. This has been on the topic of discussion for the last decade. It hasn't gotten better. It hasn't been solved. It's just continuously, exponentially increasing as predicted. That clinical research professionals are a huge brain trust in the institution and in the enterprise. And so turnover issues are a big siphoning of a large brain trust. And if we could really harness that, it would be important. But it's also important for us to come together with our ideas and with our knowledge base to strengthen the institution as well as our own professional growth. This norm of seat of the pants training still exists. We had one of the unmeetings were held yesterday about continuing education, and while it's happening, it's still very seat of the pants and very disorganized across the country. So it's a problem. Job titles and descriptions are evolving, but only in a few institutions. And sometimes the job title configuration, remapping of job titles are done through HR departments, but without a knowledge of clinical research. So the iterations of new job titles have often still missed the mark for clinical research, and that's because we haven't educated HR about that, which is interesting because clinical research is the driving force of sustaining a huge institution. So as we know, when COVID hit and they stopped the elective surgeries, everybody was hit. We had hits across the entire institution, all the way down to undergraduate. So it's an amazing thing, and so we've got to do better. We have to also understand organizational climate and begin working with administration a little bit more, maybe educate them as well. Then COVID-19 hit, and we have had all sorts of brave new world opportunities as a result. So anytime something happens, it's an opportunity for multiple opportunities. And just being comfortable with Zoom. Look at what we have, more outreach in the clinical research professional group as a result of going to Zoom due to COVID. I think we've had much better strengthening of our new organization than ever before. I recently submitted a grant to study clinical research professional personalized pathways, and 2 reviewers said, well, I don't know if you really need to do all this for clinical research professionals, because those people only, get in the job for about a year and then they go on to medical school or they go somewhere else. Well, raise your hand if you think that's true. I don't think so. So the fact that the NIH reviewers didn't understand anything about this role and the importance of this aspect of the workforce was eye-opening for me. And so there you have it. But you're not going to move a mountain if they don't have a general understanding. So a little bit more about our collaborative conversations. Title was Critical Need for Professional Workforce Development at Academic Medical Centers. And the method that we're using to do this is called the unmeeting, and we had to figure out how to do an unmeeting in a Zoom situation. But basically, it's a meeting that is really driven by the participants. And so you put out the idea, here's the issue, let's say job titles, and we have a 4x4 speaker, and then everybody brainstorms what are the issues, what are the facilitators, the barriers, through sticky notes. But we had to also figure out a different way of doing sticky notes. And so, it's been a challenge, but I think we're doing really well. We've already had 3. October 8th, Denise Snyder at Duke did competency-based job titles. Wendy Lloyd at Vanderbilt did onboarding training. And then Mary Tara Roth at Boston University did issues in competency-based CRP continuing education. We have 2 sessions upcoming, and these are open to the public and free. So you can ask Karen more about how to enter into these if you don't have the information. In January, we'll talk about issues in attrition, retention, and progression. And in February, enhancing the CRP pipeline. The reason we spread it out once a month is because the coordinators who would be attending this are just overworked right now because of COVID and the shifting of workforce and having to be responsive to that. And so everybody's dealing with, they're working on fumes these days. We have a ton of information from the voices from the field in this, and we'll be doing some qualitative research on those results and maybe writing some white papers. We did a pre-conference survey, like a needs assessment, prior to the conference, just to see, well, what are the issues? And so to what extent are these issues a challenge at your organization, we asked. First was adequate and competitive salaries. And you can see right here, major and moderate challenge. This is a national voice from other academic medical center clinical research professionals such as yourself. You may have participated in this. Financial support is also an issue. They do pretty well in academic tuition reimbursement. The problem is that a lot of these institutions don't have a clinical research degree program. So you're limited in what you could choose necessarily in the field of clinical research if you didn't already have that at your institution. They were doing continuing education, but there were some problems with it. And I think it's the fractured nature of those and lack of support. Individuals felt that they needed more for certification preparation. Big challenges, major and moderate challenges for role progression. So career advancement opportunities were considered kind of an ultimate problem, which also, the ultimate problem was staff attrition and retention. There was also a major and minor challenge, but pretty much a moderate challenge for onboarding training. And so we have institutional onboarding where you have to do, HIPAA training, GCP training, but the overall training, can people hit the ground running and begin working? What do they need to know? A lot of that is not formalized at institutions, or they think it is, but it's not really hitting the mark. And then job titles, again, are a major issue. And then we asked, well, are there any formal initiatives happening at your institution to address these very same things? And a lot of people didn't really know what was going on at their institution. So, about competitive salaries, I don't know, I'm not sure. About the financial support, I'm not sure. Academic tuition reimbursement, yes, that's underway. Continuing education was underway. Onboarding of new staff is underway. A lot of people are talking about doing it, but it's interesting that it was a moderate challenge, but it's underway. So maybe they know it's a moderate challenge, but they're trying to tackle it. And same with job titles. So I think that's sort of the new thing. And we asked what they thought the reasons for obstacles at the organization. And so the key is down here, financial and resource allocation to do it, as well as in the green is organizational importance. It's not considered important to the organization to have role progression, career advancement opportunities. And maybe it's related to finance or other issues. Staff turnover, again, a financial problem, isn't really deemed a very important issue to the organization. Competency based job titles, again, organizational importance. And so there may be some at the more siloed level, but not necessarily within the institution, or they've missed the mark. Now, we also asked, because I don't know if you're aware, but you may be, that Bob Kolb at the University of Florida, CTSA, has organized a listserv and speaker series through a group called the CRP Task Force. And those came out of the Association of Clinical Translational Science meetings. And so it was formed several years ago. But if you email Bob Kolb at the email here, kolbhr@ufl.edu, he'll get you on that listserv. We asked people why they didn't attend, because some of the attendance had waned. And most people said, well, I didn't know about them. I thought they were only for directors. Some say, oh, I usually attend. Many, some, would love to attend, but it's at a bad time. But get on that list, get on any list. So how are we going to grow the OSU network of clinical research professionals at OSU? First of all, we've had great attendance at the CRP training series that Karen and Rachel have put together on the first Thursday. So thank you for being here today, and continue to attend. And we know that there are a lot of experts out there, so raise your hand and be a speaker. It's pretty easy to do. Here I am doing it. You want to join the National CRP Task Force group, Bob Kolb. Also, we need to form advisory committees and leadership and mentoring groups. There are a lot of new things that Karen and I have thought about as so important and so essential for making a difference and becoming a leader in making a difference at OSU that then will translate to other institutions. And one is that we need a task force on diversity and equity among clinical research professionals. And so we'll be reaching out to some people to begin forming that, because we've got to figure out how to prime the pipeline of a diverse, set of staff in this realm. It's so important. We want you to present your own experience at these meetings and join these task forces. Consider forming a journal club. When I was at UAB and a coordinator at UAB, we started a journal club, and we just assembled a bunch of coordinators in a group like this. And we said, we're going to start a journal club. We need somebody to present a paper on, once a month. And we had a sign up sheet, and we did it. And now with Zoom, it's even more fun, because you could call the author and ask them to be a guest speaker and just talk about their paper. And we need to be going into the literature about clinical research operations, clinical research professional development. There's a lot that has been, it's just coming out of the woodwork now. From back in the mid 80s, in late 80s, when I started in clinical research, where it took a weekend to find one article that mentioned a clinical research professional, those are just expanding. And, we need to go beyond medicine. The Med Center, we have people doing clinical research all over this institution, but also we have people at Nationwide. So we've been expanding out to Nationwide, Children's Hospital, and then also Ohio Health often attends things that we have that are open to the public, and we need to expand out to them. We want to be the central Ohio, place for professional development and education and clinical research. And we have tools that we can access. We'll be putting some of our training materials on a learning management system, kind of like a Carmen course, but it would be public facing, so that other people can attend. So opportunities abound. We want you to become more involved. We want you to be excited about it. If you think, I might want to be involved, but I'm really busy and I don't know how I can be involved, but, tell me more, email Karen, email me, and we'll just talk it through, because there's a place for everybody in improving what we do here. So I just want to encourage you to keep growing yourselves. I keep growing. I just had a major birthday, and I can't believe I'm still growing. I'm still learning. Keep a list of all the clinical trials you work on as an addendum to your resume. I mean, go grab the title and get the MCT, the clinicaltrials.gov number, and put it on there. You can put the sponsor in a parentheses. This is public information. It's not proprietary. You're not breaking a CDA to make a list of these. As time goes by, you'll be going, oh, and I did this research and that. I can't remember the title of it. Go ahead, go back. This is your homework. Make a list of all the clinical trials you ever worked on. That's part of it. Own what you have done. And if you were just a team member on that clinical trial goes on your list. If you were just supposed to do the regulatory for it or the recruitment for it, you put that clinical trial down. Your fingerprint is on it. And I want you to own it and make that list. Consider writing articles and call me if you want help. If you haven't published an article about clinical research and something unique that you're doing, one of my students that worked in the Cancer Center, we wrote an article on basket trials, and it was published by a CRP journal. So there are journals that are a little easier than the major peer-reviewed journals, just to get your feet wet and to get some things out there. If anything, they have a greater impact because the membership and the people accessing that are in the thousands and thousands, and it's exactly to the people that need it. Consider a master's in clinical research. I'm not doing this talk to advertise our program, but I think our students can attest that it's been helpful to them, and they've learned a lot. We a lot of times come in, we learn about our role, we learn, oh, just like me, your role is to go recruit. But I never was exposed to anything related to protocol amendments or a lot of the data management or anything about regulatory. I was pigeonholed into recruitment. So, students are telling me they had no idea about certain things and they've been at this for 10 years. So consider doing that. Revise your CV, expand your skill sets and enumerate those. Obtain certification, stay in the literature, keep learning, go to the OSU library and do some PubMed lit searches, and you can get the full text articles. Network. And there are a lot of national initiatives that need you. A lot of us who have been at the forefront, like Bob and Karen and myself and many others, are reaching retirement, ages. We need more people to jump forward, and there's a lot of opportunity. We want you to come along with us. So become more involved, pursue growth in soft skills as well as technical. A lot of the professional associations say that that's one of the key things that we're lacking, is really learning some of the soft skills. And those encompass two of the core competencies, which is leadership, team science, communication. Do explore clinicaltrials.gov, and if you're working in a certain discipline, find out what other studies are going, and also explore the pipeline. Google even, what is the pipeline for multiple sclerosis, and you'll get a lot of, and you'll learn, what's down the pike. Don't just do your job, but get really immersed in the big picture of your job. And you should be a member of at least one professional organization. And that's part of being a professional. And I'm sorry, you just have to, you got to buy your car tag and you got to pay your rent, but you got to pay your dues. And a lot of these professional associations have some opportunities to just pay by month. Keep an e-portfolio. You can do your resume, but also maybe do it electronically. There are a lot of free emails. A lot of these things come into my email inbox, and yes, it's too much. And some days I look at them and sometimes I don't. I'll give you a list of some of those in the next slide, but Fierce Pharma is a great one. If you want to know what's happening, you'll be the first to read about the AEs from the Pfizer vaccine for COVID. Hot off the press, if you have a history of allergy problems, don't take that vaccine. They had several anaphylactic reactions. So just nice to know. It's one thing when you do a phase 1 trial in a very healthy adult population with no underlying illnesses, just to see how the vaccine works. But then when you go to the general population, you go, oh, maybe shouldn't go with that population or this, and they're going to learn even more about it. Don't be afraid of the vaccine, though. If you do create a LinkedIn account, but use it for professional use, don't link your personal social media to your professional resumes or anything like that. And follow clinical research on Twitter. If you want to know what's really happening in COVID, don't listen to Fox News. Do not listen to anything on the TV. Just go to Twitter and follow infectious disease physicians and key opinion leaders in infectious disease. That's who you're going to get the real truth from. And they will be very blunt about what they think, and they will present their research, and it's so much fun. Now, a big lesson I want to show you here is never burn a bridge. A lot of times when you want to change your job situation, you feel like you have to have a disruption or an issue to be able to leave because you have this guilt and you don't want to move on to something else. Never burn a bridge. I keep cycling back to the cardiology people. I'm cycled back in with the infectious disease people. We're collaborating. We're all learning. If the shoe doesn't fit where I'm at, I will move on to the next thing, but I'm not going to burn a bridge in doing it. And I think coordinators could really learn that lesson. If you're not familiar with the core competencies, you should go to this website. You should read all of them. We have done some research where we've shown the basic level of each of the competencies, the skilled level, and the advanced level. So it really can be a place for you to set your goals from. Your curriculum vitae. this slide will have sort of how you should lay out your CV. I've been receiving from students some really cute CVs using different Microsoft templates. In clinical research, no. And once you start working in academia and everything, you can drop high school, all that off of your CV. But you want your personal data, education, licensure. These are the headers: licensure, certification, and training certificates, professional experience, your research employment, other professional experience, or other employment that is pertinent. So my CV now doesn't have anything about all the different schools I taught at. Research activities, you want to list FTEs on federal grants. Even if you're just part of the staffing on the federal grant, you want to put those. Publication and abstracts. And you want to format these so that, you know, you're either using APA or Vancouver or whatever, but don't do a hodgepodge. And do use the citations for the publications in the abstracts or the talk presentations in the strictest sense of the word. Use that formatting correctly. Just shows how professional you are, and it gives confidence to the person looking at your work, because they're going to need somebody whose attention to detail and writing are there. So also presentation. So if you give a presentation like this, it gets put on your CV in APA format and you've got it listed. All your institutional activities and committees, that's a header. Professional society memberships and committees. Awards and honors. We need to do better with giving awards and honors to clinical research professionals. Maybe we need a committee on that and find out how we can do that. So these things are all resume building. Community service is okay. And then addendum, this is where you're going to have the list of all those protocols in reverse chronological order with the full title of the protocol, the sponsor, and the NCT number. We don't need to know about the grant amount. Don't even need to know about the PI. You could put the PI in parentheses if you wanted. But the other thing is learn something new every month. And then professional associations, just to let you know, it's not just ACRP and SOCRA. CRN is the International Association of Clinical Research Nurses. Priminar is an organization that a lot of IRBs are members of, and they have a certification. Society for Clinical Data Management, they have a certification. RAPS is Regulatory Affairs Professional Society, and they have a certification called RAC. And then Drug Information Association, they have some certificates, but I don't think a certification. To maintain a membership, you know, in at least one is important. But you can also join committees in these, and that's also resume building. We all need help. Keep learning, stay informed, search the literature. These are some of the things that you can link to. FiercePharma.com, get on their listserv. Go to the click-cta.org website. That is for all of the CTSA hubs, and they have a plethora of things. There's a free journal, magiworld.org, has a journal of clinical research best practices. Transcelerate Pharma Inc. is amazing website on some of the key issues and best practices in clinical research. There is accreditation coming down the pike. And also to emphasize continuing your education. And yes, we will give you these slides. So if you have any interest in being published, should we develop a Zoom writing group, meet once monthly or every other month? Who wants to do that? Get it started. I'll be glad to help out, mentor that. So just to sum up, because enough about all this, reach up, reach out, ask questions, stay well, wear your mask, and above all, know your value.